Hey, welcome to my podcast where I discuss the origins of all sorts of things. I'm your host, Danny Payne, and this is a very merry episode of On the Origin of Everything. Christmas in America involves buying gifts, wrapping those gifts, and putting them in the living room under a pine tree that's been decorated with lights and ornaments. Cookies and milk are set out the night before for the jolly old man in a red suit who slides down the chimney with a sack of presents. Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, Kris Kringle, reindeer and a sleigh, elves and candy canes, but also the birth of Jesus, nativity scenes, joy to the world, the Lord is come. The reason for the season is the birth of Christ after all, right? So how did we end up with so many traditions being celebrated all at once? The Christmas we know and love today is a culmination of thousands of years of traditions from various cultures and time periods. So grab a hot chocolate and get cozy by the fireplace, because we're about to travel back to ancient times to piece together this giant puzzle that is the Christmas holiday. The ancient world dealt with a problem that we don't deal with today, and this problem spurred many beliefs and customs that contributed to the eventual Christmas. The problem I'm referring to is darkness. Before electricity, so basically all of human history, the world was a very dark place. So the sun was everything. For many ancient cultures, the sun was synonymous with life, and darkness with death. The ancient Egyptians worshipped Ra, the sun god, and believed that the sun's cycle of rising and setting was a daily rebirth, and that Ra would grow weaker in the fall and recover as the days began to get longer at the winter solstice. If you need a little refresher on what the winter solstice is, it's the longest night of the year, marking the middle of winter and the beginning of more sunlight to come. It lands on December 21st. The Celts also viewed the winter solstice as a turning point when darkness gave way to light, the death of the old sun and the birth of the new sun. The Norse people regarded this time of year as the sun's triumph over darkness, and other civilizations held celebrations during mid to late December too. The ancient Romans celebrated Saturnalia, honoring the god of agriculture, Saturn, from December 17th to the 23rd. They also believed in Sol, the sun god, but Sol had been less significant to the Romans until Emperor Aurelian in 274 CE promoted Sol as the chief deity of Rome. Sol was renamed Sol Invictus, meaning the unconquered sun, emphasizing supreme power. A festival was held celebrating the rebirth of Sol Invictus after the winter solstice on December 25th. So, the pre-Christian Roman Empire was celebrating the birth of a god on December 25th. Christianity was developing through the 1st to 3rd centuries and grew to become the official religion of the Roman Empire in the 4th century. To make the transition go more smoothly, Sol Invictus was reframed as the birth of the true light of the world, Jesus. It was also believed by some that Jesus was conceived on March 25th, so 9 months later would put his birthday around December 25th. There is no evidence that Jesus was actually conceived on March 25th, but this belief supported the choice to celebrate his birthday on December 25th. I love the parallel of a sun god conquering darkness with light, and the Son of God conquering sin and death with light and truth. Malachi 4 verse 2 reads, "But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings." The phrase Son of Righteousness in that passage is spelled S-U-N even. John 8:12 quotes Jesus as declaring, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Light as a symbol of life isn't exclusive to Christianity. Enlightenment is a term used by many religions and philosophies, denoting wisdom and spiritual awakening. Even the Age of Enlightenment refers to illuminating the world with reason and knowledge. It's so interesting how much light has mattered to us from the beginning. So, we have been celebrating Christmas since the 4th century. but we didn't call it Christmas until the 11th century. It was originally called Natalis Domini, Latin for Birth of the Lord, in the 4th century, and over the next 700 years people referred to it as simply the Nativity, or the birth of Christ. The word Christmas comes from Christ's Mass, Mass being the Catholic Church service. Christ's Mass was the service devoted to the birth of Christ, and over time it got shortened from Christ's Mass to Christmas. Now, what's the deal with Christmas trees? Why are we bringing trees inside our houses? Well, many ancient cultures regarded evergreens as a symbol of hope and life through the darkest time of the year. Like, if these plants can make it, so can we. The first people to bring greenery indoors to then decorate them for the winter solstice were the ancient Greeks, as early as 1000 BCE. This practice influenced Saturnalia, observed by the Romans, which was later carried over to Christmas traditions when Rome went Christian. Evergreens and Christmas go way back. But these plants weren't pine or fir trees. They were other evergreens like laurels and olive branches. So who were the first to bring pine trees indoors? This practice first appeared among German Lutherans during the Reformation. They decorated these trees with paper roses, sweets, and apples. But why? Well, I was shocked to find that Christmas trees actually have a Christian origin. In medieval Europe, there were these things called paradise plays, which were theatrical performances of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. The centerpiece of this play was a fir tree or pine tree that they called the Paradise Tree, also known as the Tree of Knowledge, bearing the forbidden fruit. This play was held on Christmas Eve and depicted the fall of Adam and Eve to connect humanity's fall with Christ's birth and his mission to redeem humanity from the fall. This paradise tree was so iconic that over time it became a domestic family tradition among Lutherans first, then spread to other Protestant denominations, and would eventually be adopted by Catholic families too. As I mentioned before, the decorations began with paper roses, sweets, and apples, and evolved to more elaborate ornaments, including candles. Which seems like such a fire hazard, doesn't it? Well, they were a fire hazard, but people used them anyway. Candles on Christmas tree branches were precursors to electric Christmas lights, of course. What about gift giving at Christmas? Why did we start doing that? Remember Saturnalia, the Roman midwinter festival to honor the god of agriculture? Part of Saturnalia involved gift exchanges as gestures of friendship and goodwill. When Rome turned Christian in the 4th century, they reinterpreted the context of giving gifts to the gifts the Magi gave baby Jesus, and Jesus himself being God's gift to humanity. Another easy transition from a pagan tradition to a Christian one. Concurrently, in Northern Europe, the Germanic peoples also practiced gift exchanges during their midwinter celebration called Yule. They had a big feast and sacrificed a boar for good luck in the coming year. Yikes. And they also engaged in lavish gift giving. We're talking robes made of silk with gold embroidery and gold buttons, finely crafted weapons, even livestock and grants of land were given. These generous exchanges were meant to strengthen social ties and cement alliances between the giver and receiver. A Germanic ethos states, "Mutual giving makes for friendship." When Germanic lands became Christian, Yule was gradually absorbed by Christmas, and the practice of gift-giving continued in a new Christian context. But that wasn't the only thing that Christmas gained from Yule. Ever heard of a Yule log? The reason a burning log in a fireplace is part of the Christmas aesthetic is because the Yule celebration also involved burning a huge log, sometimes an entire tree trunk, until it was fully consumed, which could take several days. This ritual represented the rebirth of the sun, bringing good fortune, fertility, and protection in the coming year. And once again, its meaning changed from that to the light of Christ when Christianity reached these cultures. In the Middle Ages, the Yule logs were brought indoors and burned at the hearth as a Christmas Eve custom. Then it was appropriated to the Christian 12 Days of Christmas tradition, where the log would burn continuously from December 25th to January 6th, the period between Jesus' birth and the day of the Magi's visit. I'm realizing that this has been a ton of information. I guess I could have just said that the December 25th date stemmed from winter solstice celebrations, the word Christmas comes from Christ's Mass, Christmas trees started with German Lutherans and paradise plays, and gift-giving was an old Roman and Germanic tradition that was appropriated to Christmas. But each one of those origins could be their own episode. There's so much to learn about everything I've touched on. But let's take a quick breather right here, and when I come back, I'll get into the really eerie origin of the mistletoe. This episode is brought to you by nothing. To help keep ads off this show, consider donating by clicking the Patreon link in the show notes, or by going to patreon.com/ontheoriginofeverything. Another way you can support this show is by giving it a 5-star rating and review, or by following it, or sharing it. Let's build a community of people that are curious and always learning. Now, back to the show. Today we hang mistletoe and romantically share a kiss while standing underneath it. A cute little custom from the late Middle Ages. But the cultural significance of this plant goes back way further, to an origin that felt more closely related to Halloween than Christmas. You'll see what I mean. In the 1st century CE, and possibly earlier, the Celts regarded the mistletoe plant as sacred and performed a peculiar ritual when they found some. Now, the only account about this ritual comes from a 1st century Roman author, naturalist, and military commander, Pliny the Elder, or Pliny the Elder. I like Pliny. He compiled 37 volumes cataloging as much human knowledge of the natural world as he could, an early form of encyclopedia. This Pliny the Elder guy wrote about what he witnessed the Celtic Druids doing. He says, "The Druids held nothing more sacred than the mistletoe, and the tree that bears it, supposing always that tree to be the oak. It is the notion with them that everything that grows on it has been sent immediately from heaven, and that the mistletoe upon it is a proof that the tree has been selected by God himself as an object of his especial favor. The mistletoe, however, is but rarely found upon the oak, and when found, is gathered with rites replete with religious awe. They call mistletoe by a name which signifies, in their language, the all-healing. Having made all due preparations for the sacrifice and a banquet beneath the trees, they bring thither 2 white bulls. Clad in a white robe, the priest ascends the tree and cuts the mistletoe with a golden sickle, which is received by others in a white cloth. They then sacrifice the victims, offering up their prayers that God will render this gift of his auspicious to those whom he has so granted it. It is the belief with them that the mistletoe, taken in drink, will impact fecundity to all animals that are barren, and that it is an antidote for all poisons." So let me recap all that and paint you the picture. Imagine this scene. You're taking a 1st century walk through some woods and come upon a clearing. You see a bunch of people in white robes circled around an oak tree. One of them climbs the tree, holding a golden curved knife, and cuts some mistletoe off of a branch, then lowers it on a white cloth down to the cloaked people below. Then they commence the slaughtering of 2 white bulls, while someone brews a potion in a cauldron with the white berries of the mistletoe. They all drink the elixir and feast on the bull meat under the old oak tree. Super Christmassy, right? A far cry from the mistletoe tradition of today. According to Pliny, the Druids believed that mistletoe cured infertility and acted as an antidote for all poison. But mistletoe is actually toxic and can potentially be lethal in large doses. So if Pliny's account is accurate, it's possible that the Celts weren't consuming enough of the toxin to die from it. Mistletoe is also a parasite. That's how it can grow on an oak tree. But anyway, how did this plant become associated with romance? Well, it's not a big stretch to go from a fertility charm to a romance charm. and medieval folklore perpetuated the belief in its powers as a good luck charm through the Middle Ages. Mistletoe didn't have a place in Christianity, as it was seen as a form of pagan idolatry by the Catholic Church. But the folk traditions endured in popular culture and took on many forms, from hanging mistletoe in the home in order to bring peace and protection, to standing underneath it to bless a friendship or declare a truce between enemies, from warding off evil spirits to promoting an atmosphere of love. By the 16th century, enough time had passed for the stigma toward mistletoe's pagan roots to wear off, and mistletoe began to be incorporated into Christmas decorations. Mistletoe is, after all, an evergreen, and it's most commonly spotted in the winter when the leaves of other trees have fallen. This is when the kissing began, in the 18th century in Britain. They hung kissing boughs over doorways, which were mistletoe wreaths. Victorian England would run away with this tradition, and kissing underneath the mistletoe, though not a huge part of Christmas these days, has never fully gone away. Well, we can't talk about Christmas without talking about Santa Claus. He's got a weird name and he does weird things like policing good behavior, carrying presents in a big sack, and having magical powers. And we just accept it, probably because we don't have a real belief in Santa Claus, but he is based on real beliefs. The Germanic tribes that celebrated Yule believed in a god named Odin, or the Anglo-Saxon Woden. This is the etymology of Wednesday, believe it or not. Odin was a bearded, cloaked man who rode through the sky on his 8-legged horse during Yule, and children would leave boots filled with food for his horse, and in return, Odin would reward the children with gifts. He was associated with Yule, midwinter, and magical abilities. Over the next 1,000 years, though, these beliefs would fade away, but the belief in a figure like Odin would make it easier to adopt Saint Nicholas. Nikolaos of Myra was a bishop in the early 4th century, known for his generosity, his protection of sailors, of children, and the poor. After his death, he was venerated as a saint for his charity and noble acts. An annual feast was held in his honor on December 6th, the date of his passing. Children received gifts as part of this celebration to commemorate his good deeds toward children. Being that this tradition of giving gifts to children was so close to December 25th, in the late Middle Ages, St. Nicholas Day began to merge with Christmas, and this would be the third gift-giving tradition to be absorbed into Christmas: Roman Saturnalia, the Norse Yule, and now St. Nicholas Day. The Germanic people of Switzerland in the 11th century had their own version of St. Nicholas, Sammy Klaus. He had a sidekick, Schmutzli, who kidnapped naughty kids and threw them in a big sack to later cook them and eat them. That was your fate if you were a really bad kid. And if you were bad but not that bad, Schmutzli would fill your stockings with manure. These ideas may seem random, but the duality of a benevolent figure and a punisher for a companion mirrored medieval morality. Good behavior is rewarded and bad behavior is punished. Schmutzli's character parallels other folkloric dark companions to St. Nicholas, like that of Krampus, or Belsnickel for all you Office fans. There were a lot of traditions like this throughout the Middle Ages. The whole naughty or nice thing comes from these medieval tropes. In contrast to the nice and mean duo, Northern Europeans in the 15th century celebrated the Frost King or the Winter King. In Anglo-Saxon England, he was Father Christmas. He wasn't a Santa Claus figure at first, just a personification of winter and a symbol of cheer and festivity who went by different names like Old Man Winter or Sir Christmas. The Reformation rebelled hard against the veneration of saints and aimed to suppress sainthood from Christianity, and along with it, St. Nicholas. Martin Luther wanted to move focus from saints to Christ and introduced Christkindl as an alternative. Christkindl simply meaning Christ child. English speakers would pronounce it Kris Kringle, so that's where that name comes from. Instead of St. Nicholas giving gifts on December 6th, Martin Luther pushed for Christkindl giving gifts on Christmas. Many Christmas traditions today still reflect this change. In some Spanish-speaking countries, El Niño Jesús is the one who brings you presents, not Santa Claus. I had always thought that was a weird tradition, but now I know why. It was Martin Luther's doing. Despite the Reformation's attempts to erase St. Nicholas, he didn't disappear. The Dutch, in particular, held on to their St. Nicholas tradition, and their version is the direct ancestor of Santa Claus. They called him Sinterklaas, short for Sint Nicolaas. He wore red ecclesiastical robes, rode a white horse, and gave gifts to children. By the time Dutch settlers arrived in New Amsterdam, later New York, Sinterklaas had evolved from a saint to a Christmas figure. It was in America that the different versions of St. Nicholas that were still around, like Father Christmas, Kris Kringle, and Sinterklaas, merged to become Santa Claus. And this concludes part 1 of the ancient origins of Christmas. In a couple of weeks, I'll do the origins of modern Christmas because there's so much more to cover. It's going to be great. But for now, I'll leave it right there. But boy, did we cover a lot of ground, huh? I'm going to go decorate my Christmas tree, wrap some presents, and maybe I'll go out and get some mistletoe and make a Christmas bow. Brew myself a little elixir. Kidding. Don't do that. All right, guys. Merry Christmas, and I'll be back in 2 weeks with more Christmas origins. Until next time, so long. Research, music, and production was all done by Jezere Wilson. This podcast is listener-supported, owned and operated by Jez and myself under the On the Origin of Everything LLC in the United States. All rights reserved. We can be reached via email at info@ontheoriginpod.com.